like making a lot of money. And it was like everything that we listed and like in 1 second it's sold. And then we didn't know like what we don't know.
Okay, welcome to the My Wife Quit Her Job podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have a student in my course, Ming Wang, on the show. Now, Ming's husband actually purchased my class for her back in, I think, 2018. And she's on track to make over $2 million this year with her maternity wear store over at Alina Mae Maternity. Now, I'm very eager to delve deeper into her business and learn more about her experience starting a successful apparel company. And with that, welcome to the show, Ming. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I know we chatted a lot before I hit the record button here, but just please tell the audience about your store, what you sell, and why you even started an apparel store of all things.
So I think that my experience might be a little bit different than a lot of other students, like maybe in your course, because I didn't really like start an Amazon business trying to say like, oh, I want to make a lot of money. Like for me, like when I started Alina Mae, it's because I felt the pain point for the pregnancy people and trying to find professional clothing. And so I was pregnant at the time and I was managing like a 70 people team at a really large company. And it's really hard to be comfortable looking professional and while you're raising a baby in your belly.
Sure.
So that's the reason like why I started Alina Mae at the time, is trying to just like helping this group of people. And it wasn't like a lot of, let's say like, very money oriented at the time, because I know there will be like a better, like profitable and easier to get in like niches than the women apparel, because this is a very competitive field.
Yeah.
But with like Steve's course, you know how like people say like, oh, you're trying to find people's like a pain point. And I think we find a really good pain point at the time. And I sincerely want to help these group of people. And that's the reason why I went in there. And there was a lot of capital investment, but at the same time, it passed all the criteria that you mentioned, right? Like it was still profitable. It did require a lot of capital, but at the time I did have the capital already.
How much did you invest? I'm curious.
I would say, think about it. Like, I don't really have a legit number, but like, think about it, like for each of the orders that you place, it would at least for like a 500 units. Sometimes it's up to like 1,000 units across, like it crosses different sizes, but one color.
Right.
Right. And then if you want to start, you need to have, I don't know, like a 2 or 3 like colors. And then each of the product will cost at least like $9 or $10. So you can do the calculation. So like,
so actually that doesn't sound that bad then.
It's
well,
actually
assuming, yeah.
Like compared to like, if you want to start like a whole fashion brand, right? So like we actually did that probably about like a 2 years in, I would say. It's like when I quit my corporate job, actually focusing on Alina Mae at the time, we have to really expand it and trying to build a website off of it, right? It's not just like Amazon one listing. And that was the time when we actually invest a lot, because now you're not talking about just like a 1 or 2, like a style. And it's probably under, say, pants, you will have like a couple styles, and under shirt, you have a couple styles, and under dress, you have a couple styles, and each style will have a couple colors. And then you got huge like investment at that time. Right. And then imagine each one of them, you're spending about like 10 grand.
Right.
And that's like a pretty big investment.
So how many pieces did you start with, or designs?
At the beginning, there was just a one listing of pants.
Okay.
Yes. So if you think about professional clothing, and especially for like a maternity wear, right? And you just have black dress pants. And then so you could start with that. But then quickly we realized that, hey, you're not really getting a lot of the market because your brand was not that aware, like by your customers. So we start like a couple of different pants, and then like we start the shirts, and we start like also like the sets and stuff like that.
So walk me through that. So you bought one set of pants, I guess 500 units or whatever it was. How did that one set of pants sell when you listed them on Amazon?
Yeah, so I didn't buy the pants. I actually designed it. They're like a specific things that's not on the market, and I would like to see as the pregnant person, like myself, as also like a professional worker, like a woman myself, right? So I designed the pants and I talked to the suppliers. So when it was launched, it was unique to us, essentially. Right. And then right now, of course, there's a lot of competitors and they're doing like a very similar things. So I designed that, and then the minimum, I think back then probably like a 1,200 or so. And then
Okay.
so we started that listing. It didn't really go that well, but like I already kind of know about like how Amazon works and everything. And I don't really need to set up a warehouse system or fulfillment system, all that kind of stuff. So like that was pretty convenient. So I added that, and then start really like going add a volume when we try to add a little bit different colors to it. So when you only have that one listing, like a one color, don't get a lot. It just because,
Mhm.
and so when we added like besides the black, we added like a navy, we added like a gray, and then added some other colors, but different, the same style, but different colors. And that's when the traffic start growing. I probably added online in like the end of the summer in 1 year. And then by the winter time, it was really start growing. And I remember that because that was a Chinese New Year time. So my factory in China, they stopped working. And then,
Right.
so we just boosted up the rank and they tanked because we're out of stock. And then so the next year you start like ordering more, and it just kind of start growing from there.
How many sizes did you carry of your pants?
At the beginning, I only carry 3 sizes.
So small, medium, large?
Yes.
Okay.
And like the sizes actually doesn't really matter that much. It's actually the color or the material of pants.
Sure.
So like one thing I actually learned more recently, the reason why they give you a minimum order quantity is not because of like, oh, like they cannot go onto a product line or whatsoever. It's because they are a supplier for the clothing, right? The cloth to make the fabric. They do it per time. Does it make sense? Like their per order is at least a minimum quantity of like a one. I don't know how to say that quantity.
So for our company, we have to, they like buy a roll of fabric.
Yes, the roll. Yes.
And then they have to use it. Yeah.
They have to use up the whole roll, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about like a smaller, like shorts, a whole roll, it could cost, say, like 1,000 pieces. Like, make one roll. Pants or like a larger dresses, they can probably only produce like a 200 or something. And so like the way how I did it, and it takes a lot of communication and trust from your supplier. I didn't do it at the beginning. It's really hard to do that with a new supplier you didn't know about. But like nowadays, because like, the supplier has and been working with us for quite a while. If you look at like our store, it's the same fabric used for different products. So like the same fabric that used for dress can also be the same fabric used for pants. So for example, currently I'm launching like a 2 new product. And in each of the minimum quantity order I got for per size per product, you're talking about like a 10, 15 pieces. That could easily sold out.
Right.
And it's because it's like they purchased 2 roll of the product and it's used by like 4 and 5 different styles. And each styles only get like a very minimum, like a quantity.
I guess what I'm asking you is you have to decide how many of each size to make and how many of each color to make. How did you determine that in the beginning?
At the very beginning, it was not much a strategy. It was just like a small, medium, large. That's a look at like what other competitors are offering, and let's try to offer the same. And you can kind of see it with like the ASINs, like a ranking a little bit, right? With all the different tools. I don't remember exactly because this is a couple of years ago already, but like you can kind of see like, oh, what's their ratios? And even with that, it was not that very accurate. So at the beginning, I think what we decided is basically, oh, small, medium, large, they're all about the same. And then all the XL, like XS, it's probably not going to be like even worth it. And it's like 1-to-1-to-1 ratio for small, medium, large. And then that's exactly what we ordered. Say like, the minimum order is like a 300. We just order 100, 100, 100.
Okay.
But then we try to, for the next order, try to make it up, right? So if you see the small is like selling really fast, and then if you see the ratio is like a 2-to-1-to-1, and then the next order of like a 300, you just use 300 divided by 4 and times whatever the ratio. And then that was not very right either. Like it was just like, and what we even figured out is some products. So for example, like when people start working from home, we do like a work from home, like a work, like Zoom appropriate, like a working clothes, right? Yep. That is very different than like a professional working clothes, because they have like it's like a lot of people buy the large sizes versus like the smaller, more fit sizes, right? And then so we start with a 3 and then we start adding more. And then before that, I did socks, like the non-skid socks, and that market is totally saturated. We used to be like a #1 on Amazon, all that kind of stuff, because the timing was good, and we didn't really take care of the listing. And now we're like nowhere to be found, basically. But that one is one size. And then a lot of times, yes, when people with like a bigger foot or smaller foot, it didn't fit. and the return, like for to handle, it's not very close. So like before with the socks, I literally just told Amazon like, oh, whatever the customer returns, just throw it away, like discard it.
Right.
And I quickly discovered for clothing, you can't do that. Like the amount of return that we get, like it's a pretty decent.
What is the percentage? I'm very curious.
I would say, let me actually double check on this.
I mean, my friends say 20 to 30%. I'm just curious what yours is.
We're actually lower than that.
Okay, good.
About like a 15, but definitely less than 20.
Okay. So how do you deal with those?
It's actually deal with, I think, the product type, because like when you deal with maternity, like you're dealing with a woman that their body is constantly growing. So from your materials, from your design, from your cut, everything needs to be like pretty perfect in order to fit this group of people. And these group of people they have like a certain needs and not a lot of people could understand. And I think that's what we did really well. It's like really understand their need and design something that actually fits their need, right? So that kind of like helps a lot with the other stuff, like returns, for example. Like our return rate, I know the industry standard is about like the 20-30%. If we would have the 30% return rate, we would not be surviving at this rate.
Okay. Are you a clothing designer?
I am actually not.
So how did you design your pieces?
So sorry, like one thing. I just checked our return rate this year is about like 11%.
Okay, which is very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
For apparel.
Yeah. So my background is actually engineering, but I was always working on the business side of engineering. Yeah, last year return rate is 10.8%. So it's like right around that 10-11%. Okay. Yeah, so my background is in engineering, but I was always on the business side of engineering doing product management, right? And then product management, like what you get is basically the courses where I actually really deep dive into your courses is that value propositions and trying to understand the customer pain. So I think I have the skill sets, but I don't really have the fashion design, like the more hardcore, like in fashion. But product design is product design, like understand your customers, understand your customer, right? So it takes a lot of communications with the supplier itself. So like I would like, I don't know like how many prototypes like people do with their suppliers. Like because I design my own things, it would take like at the beginning, at least 5 to 6 iterations until I have a product out. So like that's where I save a lot of like my time and energy, like going into there and then save the headaches later. Make sense?
Did you ever go there or were they shipping it back and forth? Because I know for us, it takes at least a week to get something.
Yes, so I actually find this supplier right in 2018. And that's like about the time when I purchased a course. And I think there was like a video about you going to the Canton Fair. So I went to the Canton Fair. And then if you know, like there was like a break between the Canton Fairs, the two phases. I went to like the Shanghai area of China. So, and I literally stumbled upon like this little supplier. And I actually never met her. Like till today, I never met her. So she was not there, as I just grabbed like a business card from a person who was like watching her store for her. And then when I really started this, it was summer of 2019, right? Like that's when I got my first order. So it did take a really long time. It's about like, I'll say 8 months for the first shipment coming in. And then pandemic happened. And I also gave birth to my son. And then right after like my son was like, we booked a ticket to China in January of 2020. And China locked down January 2020. Wow. So like I've been doing business with this person for this long. I've never met her. And all this stuff is basically like a FedEx, like over. It takes about a week. And then there's like different, like, and I would go on WeChat and start a video call with her about like, this is what's going on, right? And then itself, like I did have a Chinese speaking assistant at the time. And then so like they were like doing a lot of like communications for me as well. Like, and then myself, like I do speak of like Chinese as well. So that helped a little bit about like, oh, this is the difference and stuff. And then it does like for each of the item at the very beginning, it would not be very weird to say it takes about like a 4 to 6 months to try to get one product out. And but right now, because I've been working with her for so long, it get a lot easier for my new product this season. Like we're launching a lot of new products and they're quite unique. And they're like something that Chinese people would not even understand, that kind of uniqueness, right? And like the whole designing process, like from the product was, the idea was initiated to the shipment is sent from China, not arrived to United States, but sent from China. I'll say about like a 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. When you're doing iterations, like I don't really know anything about textiles like from a design standpoint. But when we do it, we say, hey, we give them like a mock-up of a drawing. We say, hey, can you do this? Because
Yeah.
we're not design. My wife and I weren't designers, and we just ask,
Yeah.
is that how you do it with your clothing also? Like, can you cut this a little differently, or do you have like a person making a tech pack for you?
There's two things. So I've never made a tech pack. I actually like just learned about the word tech pack recently, even though I do like a fashion for so long. So there are two sides of things. So one is a material, right? Kind of like the fabric, the pattern on the fabric and then things like that. And then the other thing is the style of it, right? The cut, like do you have a pocket? Do you have like, is it like a zipper or something like that, right? And then so for that side of things, it's like I always just try to do incremental improvements on the current marketing, like what's on the market.
Got it.
Okay. Right. So like you can do that. And then the fabric side of things, I'm not a designer either. So I like, you can search and you can just be like clothing fabric or like, you know, like a floral, like a patterns. And I actually bought like some, I think it's called like a freepic.com or something. One of those like a picture website that you can subscribe. So you can actually own, you can buy the picture from them. So you can use for commercial uses. So I bought like the membership, something like that. And I'll be like, oh, I really like this fabric, but I don't like the bird on it. Get rid of a bird and add this flower, you know,
right. Okay.
That's gonna, I don't even do drawings. So like, I can't even do drawings. And then most like, or just to be like, this is like blue, but this blue is more like the navy, bright blue. Let's do like a little baby blue, right? You know, like stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Because anyone listening here is going to be like, hey, I'm not a designer. How am I going to do clothing? Can we talk about Amazon real quick? Like Amazon's flooded with apparel.
Yes.
How did you get your first sales with the pants? Like, I mean, I can imagine PPC is really expensive. You have a reasonably high return rate compared to other products.
Yes.
How did you launch?
I remember when I was in your course, the first thing you mentioned is like, oh, that never get into apparel or like electronics, basically, right? And then I'm like, shoot, like this is actually the part like I really want to get into because then, you know, clothing for myself and also trying to make some money out of it. And it just a little bit background about me, like I started selling on Amazon, not for like money, just to get rid of my old stuff, like back in 2010. I never thought it would be like a business to do, right? And then about like a 2014, 2015, my boyfriend, now husband, like moved in with me. And of course he has a lot of trash, but it was actually his treasure. And I just kind of like sold all his stuff.
So I know what that feels like. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like all the electronics and games and stuff he collected for years and I sold all of it. And we were like making a lot of money. And it was like everything that we listed and like in 1 second it's sold. And then we didn't know like what we don't know at the time. And then what else can we sell, right? And so we tried to get like a game controllers. We even sold like a shampoos, like kids' toys, whatever, just kind of like a drop shipping, like from like offline stuff. And back then there was not many courses and there's not like a resources at all. And we're making like a really good money. You're like talking about like a couple of thousands per day, like when you're working on it, but you have to constantly working on it.
Right.
And at the time we didn't have kids and both of us have like a full-time job. And then like, we just, after work, we go to like outlet stores, we go to Walmart and we're trying to grab whatever we grab and then just like start listing online. And then we're like, this is really tiring. What can we do? And at the time I was doing some bar classes, you know, those, you know, yeah. And I'm like, oh, the freaking pair of socks is like $20 back then. Okay. Not now. Because now I think Amazon really drove the price down already. But back then it was like a $20. I'm like, there's no way this is like a $20 to buy this. And so we started like designing our own socks, and socks design are really easy, especially the bar socks. It's just be like change the color and change like the sticky dots on the bottom, just like whatever. Yeah. So that's how we get into Amazon. So like we learned all our stuff at a really good timing when the market is not as competitive as today. So our account has really good ratings and stuff to begin with, right? So I have to admit that, like, it's like right now, like for a newcomer to sell on Amazon, I think it's like considerably harder than what we used to back then.
Sure.
And then even back in like a 2017, 2018, that's when I signed up for the courses, is because our sock business is tanking with all the competitors, right? And then when I get into the clothing stuff, I was just like, I think the main thing I've learned from a lot of Amazon sellers is like, you can have all these like great marketing, great like strategy, whatever. The fundamental is your product is actually needed, right? And so that's where I felt like I started with, as a product manager background, and especially kind of like enlightened by your very first couple courses of how do you find your product. even though I've heard about like, oh, things like keep your product cost only 30% and then save this much for marketing whatsoever. It's like, you actually need to find a product actually customer needs. Mm-hmm. And each product may have their quirkiness, like, like why like a handkerchief, like, right? Like why you guys' stuff. Yes, I understand that can be customized, I can do whatever. Like in order to find a product that fits everything with this competitive market, it's almost not possible. Right. And then for us, that's like, we have limited resources on our time, and we have limited resources on like our design capabilities. But like the money itself is actually not that limited for us, because we have built a business for a couple of years and we have the money to actually do an order that equal to like a 20 grand, 30 grand at the time.
Yep.
And then like for the returns that you mentioned, we do have the person that could be able to do the packing and then trying to like even like wash them and refold them, repackage them and send it right back. So
is that in the US then?
That was in the US.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was not too big of a deal for us. So like, judging that, it's like in the end, the fundamental is like a good product will always sell. It doesn't really, like your marketing will be a little bit less. So our PPC actually didn't really spend as much as I've seen for others. I don't know, like what's the normal PPC? Like
there's no normal. I mean, it depends on the product, right? But I would imagine maternity pants or whatever you were bidding on, pretty competitive, I would imagine. But I don't know.
Because I remember, like you mentioned about like, oh, bid at like a $1, consider like the very high end.
No, well, that was way back then. Now it's
really?
Like starting bid, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know. Because like when I started socks business back in 2014, like, 10 cents was a lot. Like,
yeah, I mean, things have changed. Yeah. But so are you still doing PPC? You are still,
right?
For
Amazon, yes, we do. Okay. And then so like I don't think we bid anything over $1.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of our customers are return customers at this point already. And it's a lot of like the word of mouth and type of things. It's not a lot of like, and I know this is very rare on Amazon. I know this is not something like where everyone could just like a copy at the same time. And I do admit, like we did catch like a pretty early, like we stumble Amazon pretty early, and we stumble your course actually pretty early as well. So we start initiate like doing a lot of things at the good timing. Right. And then like, I don't know if you feel the same. It's like the business, the longer it's in the business, the more competitive it gets. Like if you want to start, like tomorrow will be worse than today. That's all.
I mean, that's not always the case. I mean, it just really depends on your product, actually.
Right? Yeah, that's true too.
But yes, in terms of marketplaces like Amazon, I agree with you, because everyone just floods in. But when you have your own site and that sort of thing, I don't really think that there's, because you don't have your products against a whole bunch of other listings on your site, right?
Yes. That's kind of like what we feel about like our own site. Cause like our business, like in 2017, we got like just like a hostile, like a competitors, and blocked our listing. And suddenly you just you're gone from, you're making a couple $1,000s a day to like $0 a day all at once. And then so like you do feel that thing. And then the same thing, like Amazon get better about protecting the brand and protecting the integrity of the listing and all that kind of stuff, right? But at the same time, you have a lot of competitors. So when I designed my first listing, I was one and unique in the market. And right now there's at least like a 30, 50 people, and they have way more competitive price and everything. Like their marketing probably throwing a lot of money on it, and we're more chill, like because right now like our focus is on our Shopify like store, not really on
I looked at your competitors actually before this interview. I think you did a much better job with your brand page and the copy than, I mean, I looked at a couple of competitors, but
yes. And so like I think like right now, like even during the pandemic and the whole thing, like we never really lowered our price, and a lot of people, they did lower their price. So you're supposed to sell in that like a $35 range, and if people are selling for like $9.99, like they're not making any money, you know that, and they're just trying to take it over. And it would be like they will take over to like the number one spot, and then for a couple of days, as soon as they raise the price, they're gone. And then, but we just like maintain steady. And then
my philosophy is to always keep the prices high. I mean, like it's much easier to target the high end, or the higher end, than the lower end. Can we talk about your website real quick? I looked, and you're running Facebook ads, driving traffic to your Instagram account and your Facebook page. Can we talk about what your social strategy is?
I don't have one. I would
Okay.
say that. Yeah. So my social strategy is a little bit different. So like I kind of like talk to you a little bit about this. Like I don't see myself more like a Amazon seller. Originally, when I started a company, I really want to help the people who are pregnant, right? Who are in my shoes. You're pregnant, you're still trying to maintain your career. And it's really hard to juggle everything, and clothing shouldn't step into the way, right? And so my vision for the company is really trying to help the people who are pregnant or they have like a very younger kids, and then help them to able still like maintain their life and balance their work and life. So for my Alina Mae, like a Facebook page or my Instagram, I want to just trying to get like a social presence, and I'm not really focusing on monetization of it at this stage. So
Okay.
like in the future, what I want to do is like I had like a couple ideas, and I'm meeting with a lot of like the incubators and trying to see like where I can lead these ideas to. Like when my first pregnancy, I have really severe postpartum depressions. There was no help. Like, and a lot of people are like me because you moved away from your home, so you don't have like your women's network to trying to raise have your village to raise the kid, right?
Mhm.
And then my second pregnancy, it was very different. I actually hired a person. She's like a specialized in taking care of like a postpartum women as well as a kid, and a lot of focus for these kind of services to focus on the baby, but not on the mom. And then, but I find that this person, like she focused on me, right? So she cooked me very like a nutritious like a meals, and then she actually like helped me clean the house and do all those kind of stuff. And it may sound really trivial, but like it's actually really important for a lot of women, like in their postpartum age. And so like in the future, like I may try to see like there were like a lot of recipes this woman did for me, and they were like really nutritious and not just like healthy in terms of like, oh, low sugar, like low carb, whatever. There's actually nutritious for the women's bodies need at the time. And I was wondering if this could be given to a lot of other women to help them, because literally for the 6 weeks after postpartum, I came out with like better skin, better self. And you know how like in America, like they kick you out of the hospital after 48 hours, and you're
Yeah.
supposed to go back to work after 6 weeks. And then like people associate like a newborn baby's mom with like dark circles, like a really bad hair. It was a completely different like experience for me. I had like a better skin. I actually slept really well because she actually taught me like how to like comfort a baby, and then taught me like how to nurse the baby better so I can sleep through the night. And then like she cooked a meal that's specific targeting for me, right? A lot of like a Chinese herb medicine, that type of stuff.
Mhm.
And it, like that's the stuff like I want people to understand. A lot of people, they want this, like they don't know. Like this is one part, like I want to do it. And then the other part, I was actually partnered up with the OB. They're saying because of the postpartum care is still lacking in the United States, even compared to some European countries, even compared to like a China, Japan, right? And then a lot of women in their late, like a 30s, 40s, they start having health issues, right? It's not like immediately, but you will see it like in their like a late 30s and 40s, 50s, like you will see these issues. And so like we want to bring a lot of awareness to that, right? So I kind of want to use Alina Mae, like this current Amazon business, because we do get a lot of orders. So we reach out to a lot of the people who are professional women in their like a pregnancy stage for the future business to like bring people's awareness for this like a postpartum women care, like this topics. So it's, I think it's a little bit different. Like I'm not trying to like build a social presence to monetize. It's more like a build a social presence to wait for the future to happen.
So you mentioned all this traffic from Amazon and sales. I mean, how do you get those people? Because Amazon hides everything now, the name, the address, everything. So how are you leveraging that traffic?
We don't even do a lot. Like, I don't know if this is normal or not. Like we print our website on the packaging and it's always there. And
Mhm.
then we always tell them like, oh, if you want to have like, say like a free birth plan, you can go to here to get it. Or if you want to know about like these like postpartum tips or whatever, you can go to here to get it. And it's very organic. Like there's a sale, they will see this, and the conversion rate is pretty low. But each day, if you think about like we have like hundreds of orders, so these information is sent to a couple hundreds of like people, right? If
Right.
they want to come over, they will come over. So it's like I honestly don't really have a concrete like a strategy. I don't know if this is working or not. Like my Shopify order doesn't really have a lot of like, we didn't do like the SEO, so we didn't do like
Sure.
anything. Essentially our website is not optimized to be searched on Google at all. These are something on my to-do list, but not yet, right? We're
Right.
still getting orders pretty consistently. and then they are from our old like customers
Sure.
because
Yep.
they bought our product, and then if they bought one and they really liked it, and then people don't just use one pair of pants or one pair of clothing, they always want to buy like a multiple, and then we'll go to our website to buy the multiple. And
What's
then
the incentive to buy from your website?
there is a coupon, like if you are like a return the customer, and you will receive a coupon, and that was basically printed on the packaging. So like you need to be aware of like the Amazon like restrictions, right? You can't really direct the market to them being whatsoever, but like no one, I think you're still okay to say this is my website, like on the packaging.
Yeah, you're allowed to say it's your website. I mean, giving out a coupon to your website is think against TOS, but I mean, in small quantities, and if you're subtle about it, it's probably okay.
Yeah, like we just say like, oh, you can get like a free birth plan here, and then for
Right.
future orders,
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And then like it's like a couple layers away from a more direct selling and trying to lead a traffic to your own website. I don't know, like in the future, like I probably gonna do a little bit more of a push and trying to push more like traffic to the website and also to the social media account.
Yeah.
I think clothing is, if you want to serve this whole maternity group of people, I felt like a clothing could potentially be the, like, even though clothing is not good in the whole e-commerce marketplace, right? But in order to serve this group of people, clothing probably the easiest, the lowest barrier to entry already. If you think about all the other things, you probably need like an FDA, like approval, like if they're medical related, you need like all kinds of approval, and trying to compete with a big brand that's already pretty well known, or teach people a new almost like mindset, right? And that they don't have. So like we're literally using the clothing as an entrance and trying to grab this group of people and trying to sell it future.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good strategy. And then once you build that audience, you'll have an audience of, I guess the only problem with it is people only stay pregnant for so long, right? So you have like this window. It's kind of like weddings.
Yes. That's why it's like from where we focus is from pregnancy to 3 years old. And that's one thing. And it's like, we're not only just in the pregnancy, it's also postpartum. And then like after that, if you really think about it, like usually people don't just have one kid, they'll have multiple kids, right? Sure. And then I don't know if you felt the same way, like your dad as well, like when your kid is here, like the first 3 years you spend the most.
That's not true. I mean, now that they're teens, they spend a lot of money. You mean money or time?
Money.
Oh, no. It's much more expensive now. Way more expensive.
I don't have a teenagers.
Yeah,
I don't have teenagers. Yeah. I never experienced that. But I know like from when I was like just married without kids to like kids, preschool kids, like it was like a lot of money. Like all their toys are new. Like all their like furniture, like everything is just a money, right? Yeah. And I felt like once they go to school, like my kid is only 5 years old. So like when he start going to school, like now it's like settle down a little bit. Like I don't buy everything all new. Like I don't have to get diapers or wipes and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't know about the teenage years. Like
can we talk about your photography? Did you like hire models and everything?
At the beginning, no. Right now, do. And I actually highly recommend, like whoever is listening to this, if you're doing your own e-commerce store, try to outsource it. You don't have to do it in the United States even. Ask your supplier in China. They will definitely know a photographer. That's how I know about my photographer. It's like at the beginning, I was setting up like my whole, like get like the photo papers, have like the shelves and tape it onto my wall, and then trying to like navigate with my cameras and all that kind of stuff. And I don't really have like a pretty like legs or whatever. Like I'm still trying to take the photos and with all the lightings. It's really like a lot of learning curves. And then I met my supplier, right? Like the supplier in China. So, and then she wanted more business. So she was like, oh, like have your product being listed? I was like, I don't know where to find the models that's like currently pregnant to take the pictures for me. This is where I'm stuck. That's why my product is not being listed. And then she was like, well, I could just take the photos for you. And so I asked my supplier, because they have a lot of resources in China. And then the cost is like a 50, 60 bucks. And it's a set of photos. And you're talking about like, they give you like a 30 highly professional. And then the models, they're not from the United States. They're probably from like a Russia or Brazil, like some, those kind of countries. But there is like a whole industry in China. And then you saw those videos on TikTok. They do like 2 poses per second.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so like that's what I start doing. Like I just use them to do my photos. And it's so much easier than trying to use the American like resources and doing your own
Oh, it's
photo.
much more expensive too.
It's
Yeah.
much more expensive. And then like the only thing like I felt like right now, like I trying to shoot a lot of more lifestyle photos. And so like that's really hard to communicate with them about like what you want and then
Sure.
whatever. Yeah, but like with the Amazon photos where there's just like a white background, they're so experienced with it. And then that's a whole industry like that you could just leverage. I don't know if people actually talk to their suppliers about these things. And then like this is how I feel. Like I don't know if people feel the same. Like a lot of these like a Chinese Amazon sellers, they know a lot. They actually know a lot. Like, and then a lot of these suppliers, they don't not only serve you like the American buyers, they also serve those like Chinese Amazon sellers, right? So like they are kind of like connected. And once that you're connected with them, you can leverage a lot of like resources of where they had, and then people in the United States may not necessarily have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. We've asked sourcing agents for that. I don't think I've ever asked the manufacturer for photos outside of their stock photos that they have. But I want you to give advice to anyone who wants to sell apparel. Would you do it again? And if so, if you were to start all over again, would you do anything different? And what advice would you give people who want to sell clothing? Because there's a lot of people who want to.
Yeah. So I would only advise it if you have some resources already. And I will only advise like if you have resources, things like you know who the suppliers are and you have a trustful supplier that can work with you. Because a lot of the suppliers would not take very small orders. And it took me a while trying to find my first supplier even with only like, a couple thousands of like an order.
How did you find that first supplier? Was it at the fair or?
It was at a fair. And when I went to the China, like the Zhejiang area of China, so like the mid China inside of the Canton Fair, I actually stumbled upon their like a factory. I don't know if you've been to that area. It's so different. Like the factory is here, right? Like say, and then like literally like 5 minutes away, you have your packaging factory, and you have like if you need to do the logo with like the stock cars and stuff, that's like 5 minutes away. And then within a day, if you're actually local, you could get like the packaging, the samples, like everything is done within a couple hours. You don't have to wait for a design to get approved, all that kind of back and forth that you're more familiar with in the United States. That trip was definitely worth it. We spent probably like a week in China. And we got like more than what we got like for a year, like in the United States. Yeah. So I would only recommend, go back to the topic, I only recommend to get enough capital and whatever you think you need.
How much capital do you think you need?
Depends on what you're doing.
Well, so let's just follow your model, right? You started with pants, maternity wear, or whatever. How much capital do you need?
Because my per product price is in that like a $30 to $40 range. And if that's like a work on this, like a backwards, right? $30 to $40 range. And if you go back, it's saying 30% on your product cost of your sales price, you're talking about $10 per piece, right? And my product, again, if it's a one roll of cloth, it can make about like 200 to 500. So then it's the 10 times that 200 to 500. Okay. And then if you want multiple colors, you multiply that.
Right. Okay. So still like on the order of $10,000 to $20,000.
Yes.
There? Okay.
Yes. And then with that, but then also my second thing, enough capital, but also I would actually go on the higher end of clothing right away instead of like go from the low end. The market is so saturated and so competitive, and there's no way you can win against the others on your design or on your pricing, because a lot of the Chinese sellers, they are their competitive advantage. They could change the design within a week where you had to wait for samples for like a whole month or so, right? Right. And then they could do really cheap because they could find like the manufacturers that not necessarily speak English or have the export certificate or the rights to export. They could find whatever a very, very small factory and do things very cheap for them, right? And we don't have that. But on the higher end, it's a different story. Like, right. So that's where I would do. So like that means go back. It will be like more capital to start with. When you're talking about like in the $40, $50, and then your price, your whole thing probably going to be like 20 to 30 grand instead of a 10 to 20 grand. Right. And then you also need to have the resource, like if there is a return, how do you handle the return? So like right now, like I live in Georgia. So like all the houses here have a walkout basement. So my basement is basically my warehouse and also slash like a company space. So there is a room, like the basement, they have like a kitchens and stuff, like bathroom in there.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
from Maryland originally, so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So like my basement, I have like all the shelvings set up, and there's one room that's set up as an office, and I have a station for people to like pack the orders and stuff, right? So a lot of people may not have that luxury, but like that is something to consider. Like everything that you said about apparel was true. It requires a large amount of capital, a lot of returns, and it's super competitive. Like all these things you have to kind of like think it through before you step into it.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you this. You mentioned a lot of stuff, but what is your future vision for Alina Mae? Like, what are you going to be working on for the next 2 to 3 years?
I am thinking, I know instead of like a broaden like my product offering, I want to go deeper into my customer's need. So again, like the focus is from pregnancy to 3 years old, a very young kids moms. And then specific niche targeting is on professional working moms with younger kids. And I want to discover kind of like what are some other pain points they may have and how can we help with them, right? There are a couple of ideas that's like currently in my head. So my husband's works with, he's a data scientist. He works with like machine learnings and stuff. One of like his friend, and I was about to reach out, they do this using AI to generate recipe and then trying to see like what you have. Like, so for example, if I have, I don't have a lot of milk supply and where I'm nursing my baby, like there are certain food you can eat to help with that, right?
Mhm.
Or if I have like, you know, a lot of hair loss, there are certain food you can eat, like certain nutritions that you need to help with that. And then what they do, they use like this AI thing to generate recipe for people with like the current ingredient they have or whatsoever. And so like, I was like, oh, this probably could potentially be something that's really helpful with my customer. So that might be like one idea. And there's like a lot of other like a brainstorm ideas like we actually mentioned about. And then things like, we do like a milk kit, like a specifically, you know, like a HelloFresh, but specific
Right.
to like the baby mommy stage, right? Or could we do like when the babies start to wean off of, you know, milk to like actual food, could we do like a subscription like of a food delivery so people still get like a fresh stuff and then like help with, and then could we set up a service to connect with these the person I hire is a very small niche group, and she had her own like a group like a Facebook, a social media group where they introduce business, but it's a very very niche, right? And it's not available to every single place. And I think I hired her from like California, fly all the way to like my home to actually like take care for that 6 weeks of time.
Mhm.
Like, could we actually expand that business? So there's like something I want to do like in the future, specifically focusing on this customer group. Doing what? Not sure.
Yeah, so this would be obviously a different brand, right? This wouldn't fall under Alina Mae, but something
I
else.
would say like Alina Mae, my current vision is Alina Mae as a parent company. There's Alina Mae Maternity that sells physical product where they have like apparel. And soon you will see in our store, we have some like a postpartum kits where people
Mhm.
like, you know, need to use like for the postpartum stages. And then besides the physical product, the second thing where I just founded a Alina Mae Tech company, and then where we're gonna do like a more of the technology or service oriented stuff. And then my ultimate goal is for the third stage of Alina Mae, where I really want to start is like a nonprofit where we can advocate for this group of women, like provide the knowledge or whatever we do with a nonprofit to these group of people. That's kind of like my vision for Alina Mae. Alina Mae is like this is a women's like name, right? Alina and Mae are two people, like two actual women I know. And I want this
Oh,
brand to stand as like you're almost like your aunt or your mom, where you moved away from them, or you're very supportive, like a bigger sister, or your women mentor that you face at work,
right.
right? The pain that you being experienced through, we experienced before, and I can hold your hand. I can support you, like navigate your career, navigate your newly motherhood, like navigate a stage of your life and trying to get better, because you're supposed to enjoy your new kid, you enjoy this new bond of joy, not trying to worry about all these things around you. And you know, in the United States currently there are a lot of things going on that's not really in the women's favor, right? So like we don't really have a good maternity leave, we don't have a good about whatsoever like the women's may need at, you know, currently in the society. And Alina Mae stands have this persona to be always supportive, always on your end. You can always turn to Alina Mae for help. And that's kind of like the vision I see for this company.
Nice. Let me ask you this. You have two kids yourself. How many hours do you spend on your businesses? I'm just kind of curious. I mean,
I
this
have
vision is grand. So,
Yeah, I have a really crazy like a schedule. So you know how like I do the nonprofit side of things. So I started like on my own like a little bit social media, but I was like in Chinese, like helping with the Chinese American like located in United States, right? So I actually tell like my group of women about this, and everyone think I'm crazy, but like I hear this out. So my kid used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then try one extra feeding, and then this is what I discovered: their sleep time routine is at 7 o'clock. And then they get up around 4 o'clock for one feeding and they go back to sleep all the way till like a 7 or 8, right?
yeah,
But the thing is, if you put them into bed and then after the sleep routine and you sleep around like say 10 or 11, and you have to get up at 4, and then you get up again at 7, and your like sleep is so disturbed.
right.
So what I have been doing since my kid was really young is I sleep around that like a 7 or 8 time, and I get up at 4 o'clock to work. So I work from 4 to 7, and I spend the time with my kid at like a 7 to 8, right? And then they start their day, and then my next work chunk is from like the 8, or like I go to gym, and it's like 1 hour, so 9 to 12, and then 12 to 1 is another lunch break, and I work from like a 1 to like a 4 to 5, and then 5 to 8 is family time, and then that's the end of the day. So I work from 4 o'clock in the morning to about like a 4 o'clock at night, but then there's like a breaks in between where I spend my time with my kids, and then like so
I
you
don't
do
think
have
that's unusual. I know like when I was waking up in the middle of the night, that's like the best time to work. It's completely
exactly.
quiet. Yeah.
Exactly. And then a
Yeah.
lot of times, like people are like, oh, like it's really hard to have like a dinner with my kids because their sleep time is so early whatsoever. Like my suggestion are always like have breakfast with your kid and have everything in the morning instead of at night. Like if you want to go to work out like the first thing in the morning, because those things are deemed as not a super priority, right? Everything with kids, they're like important, but they're necessary but not important. Does that make sense? If like a
Yeah.
business that throw your curveball, you have to handle that curveball before you be like, oh, I'm gonna take my kid to the zoo, right? So like do those things first. So when the curveball hit you, like you can still handle the curveball. You don't just like drop your kids off to catch a curveball. That's kind of my philosophy.
Sure.
So like that's like my time. It's like if you really think about it, I actually do work a lot, but I also spend a lot of like time with my kids compared normally. Like now, because they're in summer camps, so their summer camp ends at 3 o'clock, right? So my working time is a 4 to 7. That's like a 3 hours already. And then the 9 to 12, because I do go to gym and stuff. So that's a 6 hours already. And then 1 to 3, that's like 8 hours, legit, like high quality amount of work that you can contribute into it. And
Right.
then I still spend time with my kids from like a 3 all the way to like 8 o'clock.
I mean, this is stuff that you probably couldn't do with a full-time job, right? I mean, you call your own hours essentially.
Yeah,
Right.
this is the one of the biggest reason. I think the biggest benefit why I quit my W2 job, because I was making really good like 6 figures. And then like I would start managing like a 70 something people team when I was like a 20, 27, 28, and I quit my job when I was 29. And then I think it's my work, my old job, my W2 job, the company praises about this work-life balance. Yes, there is a work-life balance, because you're never allowed to take your work back home, right? And then you just go in there, contribute your 8 hours or 9 hours, and you go back home. But the thing is that 8 hours is set. You're always working on someone else's schedule, right? So that's what I did not like. So like, so sometimes my schedule could be like 9:30 all the way to like 6:30, 6:45. These kind of like, you don't have that freedom. That's what I dislike about working for a big corporate. I understand there is like, oh, you get like the benefits, you get the stability, like you,
I
but
disagree with that comment, by the way.
you
I mean,
do.
we'll see. There's a huge recession coming. We'll see. There's already layoffs here all over Silicon Valley and a hiring freeze. We'll see how it goes.
Yes,
I lived through 3 downturns. I watched as my friends got laid off, like all around me.
that's true. Like for me, I felt this. It's like when I was at my old work, I was like, I know, because of when they do like a camp people, like they fire people, they always fire the bottom ones. And I'm always like a pretty good performer. So I always felt like, oh, I'm pretty safe here. Like I'm not gonna get canned, even the economy is bad. And I always work for a bigger company. It's not like the company gonna go like under the water, right?
Sure.
That's why I felt like the safe. But like right now, like you can feel like the business is not going as well as before. Like you almost like you know, you feel it firsthand. And then you start to worry about like, how am I going to pay for my employee? Like I have all this stock like in my warehouse, in my basement. What happened like if it didn't sell, right? Or things like, what happened if my Amazon account is going to get banned or like tomorrow? And then what am I going to do, right? Like you are responsible for a lot of things. So like it's like a different type of like stress. You know what I'm saying? Like you do have the freedom of like doing whatsoever, but I strongly prefer this freedom versus like a sense of like safetyness.
I think you feel that way because you're mostly Amazon right now. Once you have your own site, like it will never just go off overnight because you have your lists of customers. And if it goes down, it goes down very gradually, giving you time to adjust. Whereas Amazon, it could get shut off, you know. So once you do your site stuff, which I'm very curious about, like whenever you get to that point, let me know. And I think
this is the current goal for this year. This is the current goal for this year, because we did have like a bunch of incidents where like your listing was gone, and then like it took a couple of days to get it back, and then it's always like ramp up is really hard. So that's the reason. Like if you really think those like Amazon sellers that actually IPO'd, you know, like the Anchor, like that brand.
Anchor,
Like if you see like their financial report, that they're trying to move away from Amazon too. Like that's, I think everyone's like, they kind of start at Amazon and then try to move away. And technically, like, even though I bought the courses in 2018, I didn't really start working on this until like a 2019-ish time, right? Like that's when I had my first listing. So for us, it's only like about 2.5 years in. Like when I'm running this business more legit like a business. So like, I feel like at this stage, it's like, we just got kick started with Amazon. And then now we're thinking about like, how do you expand to the next stage? Like either it's offsite and start building your own social media presence and adding your more product and trying to be away. I think everyone, like you had one advice, it was like, always start on Amazon, right? And then try to build your own website. I feel like we're still on this, like, we have not done everything we could done with Amazon yet. But it's probably at the tip end with it already. So now the incremental, the cost is going to be very high for us to do the incremental improvements. So that's why this year is the first, like my website's up for like a couple months only. So
it looks good. I mean, I'm sure it'll do well. If you want to see more amazing interviews with successful entrepreneurs, then check out this next interview right here. I think you'll enjoy it and you'll definitely be inspired.